Yes, guys, welcome to the Game Week 15 live stream. This isn't a deadline live stream, but it is the day before. And of course, for those that don't know, it is the busiest time of the year for FPL, with basically Game Week deadlines every single few days. And we have got that in less than 24 hours. So this Game Week 15 live stream is going to be all about answering all of your questions, going through my transfer plans, and just kind of having a bit of a macro view on which players we need to be targeting over this crazy period. So I'm really looking forward to getting involved with any questions that you guys are answering in the chat. I always say that. Any questions that you're putting in the chat, please do fire them away throughout this entire live stream. This isn't going to be a case of you putting a question in, I answer it at the end of the live stream. I'm going to be answering them completely throughout this whole thing. Now, remember, because it's such a short turnaround, I just want to make sure I provide as much value as possible. So I think it's just really important for you to go as deep as you want to go with your team-specific questions. Just be selfish if you want to, because the turnarounds are so quick. We need to just make sure that I'm trying to address all of the big questions that you want answered. So get involved in the chat. I'm really looking forward to getting to these questions. In terms of myself, I am one of those managers that did sell Ollie Watkins for Darwin Núñez. So we will touch on what I'm going to do with my team in this live stream. So as always, if you can drop a like, massively appreciated. Morris, hope you're doing well. I think I did have this for an 8 p.m. start, so some of these questions might be old. So if you aren't in the chat, I do apologise, but I will try and answer them. So Morris already in the chat saying Pedro Porro in for Cash or Dubravka in for Turner. That's going to be completely dependent on the rest of your squad. In that situation, I really do think that Pedro Porro is a brilliant transfer in. However, I don't necessarily think that we're going to be in a situation where Pedro Porro is guaranteed clean sheets over the next few game weeks. So I think Cash is perfectly fine to hold if you want to, but Dubravka in for Turner is a very specific move, and I would only make it if you were in a situation where you had 2 free transfers or 1 transfer and no other issues in your team. JP's asking thoughts on Lo Celso in fantasy. I think Lo Celso isn't a consideration for our FPL teams right now. Yes, he done well in that previous one, but realistically, I don't think Lo Celso is a consideration. Let me know in the chat if you are looking at Lo Celso, but I just think long-term he isn't an option for our teams. And when we're buying players over the December period, we want players that either have incredible upside, for example, like a Darwin Núñez we thought was going to be that player, or somebody who has got guaranteed minutes. And I don't think Lo Celso ticks either one of those boxes. I could be proved wrong, but I just don't think he is an option in FPL for me. And Morse Tretnik, hope you're doing very well. GP saying start Palmer or Solanke. Okay, so that's a really tricky one because, of course, going into Game Week 15, we have the Cole Palmer situation where he was benched in the game against Brighton. However, it was only precautionary and he came on for the last 30 minutes. So that's really good news. Nothing to worry about Cole Palmer. And also, with the Conor Gallagher red card, he is now suspended for Game Week 15. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cole Palmer deployed in that number 10 role. Don't think they're going to rush Nkunku straight back into the team. So I think it's only natural, because Chelsea are quite blessed with some wingers in the team, we could easily see Sterling off the left, maybe a Madueke off the right, Cole Palmer down the middle with Nicholas Jackson or Armando Broja through the middle. So I think Cole Palmer's game time is absolutely locked in. Now, the big debate is him versus Solanke. Solanke actually had a brilliant game week, really unlucky not to get another goal in that game. With the fixture that he got away against Crystal Palace, I think Bournemouth could do okay in that game. The absence of Decore is obviously going to hinder Crystal Palace defensively. So I think both are fantastic picks. Palmer obviously being on penalties as well is a big factor, and I think his game time is pretty locked in. But the fixture is more difficult against Man United. Look, if I had to pick one right now, I probably would just lean towards Solanke, just because his involvement in the team, if Bournemouth are going to do well, I feel like his involvement in the team is higher than that of Cole Palmer's. So I'm going to go for the man who is probably more directly involved in goals in that Bournemouth team. Start Diaby or Lascelles. Okay, so I'm going to put it out there right now. I think Villa beat Man City. I think we've seen enough from Man City in that spine of the team that they get hurt through the middle. We've seen it in games against Arsenal where they went direct through Havertz. We saw it in the Spurs game with the counter-attacking football. And I think with the direct runners that Aston Villa have, they have the players to really hurt Man City. And the absence of Rodri as well, I think, is only going to hinder them. So I think Aston Villa score at least 1 goal, maybe 2 goals in that fixture. The only question mark about Diaby is he actually going to start? Came on for a cameo appearance at the back end of that game and obviously got the assist. Leon Bailey being a direct competition for Diaby. I think if you're worried about minutes, get Lascelles in your team and know that Newcastle defence is one of the best in the league. But if you're chasing upside, I do think it is a great fixture for Diaby. If I had to pick personally, I probably would just lean towards Lascelles, only because I'm cautious that Diaby could be a 60-minute sort of player or a half an hour player if he does come off the bench. Let me know in the chat, guys, though, which one you would go for in that situation. Jonathan is asking, bench Watkins versus City and start 4-defender lineup: Lascelles, Gabriel, Anderson, Zinchenko. Jonathan, you have to start Ollie Watkins. I'm a manager that sold Ollie Watkins for Darwin Núñez, and trust me, it is scary not owning him. And I think it's even worse if you were to bench him. As I mentioned, I think the direct running of Aston Villa is going to cause Man City real problems. They don't really get massively damaged on the flanks. Now, it's worth noting, I really think if they start Gavardio again, he is going to be in trouble against Aston Villa with a direct running of Diaby and with Leon Bailey. We've seen it with Messi, for example, in the World Cup, him get twisted on the wide flanks. And we've also seen it in the situation on the weekend with Brennan Johnson getting past him. So if they do put someone like that on the wing, I think Gavardio is going to struggle. I think Nathan Ake will come back into the team to combat that 1v1 defending. So I think Ollie Watkins has to come in. I think Man City are really going to struggle, and you just have to start him if you do own him. Mohamed's saying, is Gabriel to Trippier a good move? Okay, so Trippier, we obviously need to understand that they are one yellow card away from suspension. So if you do buy Trippier, just be cautious. You might get game week 15, but he could be suspended in game week 16. Do I like it this game week? If you were to say to me right now, who would I rather own? I definitely would rather own Trippier going into game week 15. But I'll look at the rest of your team first and foremost, because you're selling someone like Gabriel, who, let's assume he plays. I would say he has the highest possibility of a clean sheet this weekend away against Luton. So personally, even though I think you are bringing in a player who's a better option this week, I think it's quite a luxury move. I don't think you desperately have to make it unless you're sat there with 2 free transfers and you literally are going to be burning one otherwise. Morris is saying Gordon or Palmer for Diaby. Okay, so if I was to sign one right now, I would need to get a bit of clarification on the injury status of Gordon, because he obviously went off with an injury at the back end of the game. Could have just been a knock, but we haven't had anything from Eddie Howe right now to suggest if he is available. So I don't really like buying players if I don't even know they can be involved this weekend. Whereas I know Cole Palmer definitely is. I personally would just lean towards Cole Palmer just because he's on penalties and the fixtures long-term are actually better for Chelsea. So I'm just going to say Cole Palmer, but honestly, how good is Gordon so far this season? And Mohamed's also saying, by the way, I have 5.1 million in the bank. Wow, okay, Mohamed, you are obviously rolling in the dough right now. Lascelles or Johnson, Rian saying, I don't really think I'd invest in either right now, to be honest with you. If I had to pick one, it probably would be Brennan Johnson as we speak. We're not really seeing competition on the right flank right now because Kulusevski is playing as one of the 8s in the absence of Maddison. So I think Johnson's game time is pretty locked in right now. Jason, your comment helped me decide on Sterling or Gordon. I've gone with Gordon. So you think he's fit? Again, we haven't got any injury update right now regarding Anthony Gordon. Hopefully we do get something soon. But I wouldn't really make any move right now until we get that news. And hopefully we'll get something close to the deadline. And more Trent saying he's done Son to Gordon. Hey, it could have been worse if Gordon didn't deliver on that one. Is Livramento going to start? I do not know on that one. With the Newcastle fixture congestion and obviously Lewis Hall waiting in the wings, we know they've got somebody who could easily step into the team. So I would be a little bit cautious about Livramento's start. And the problem with Livramento, he's one of those players that if he's on the bench, I can almost guarantee he will come on because he's one of the few players that can play in multiple positions. So he could even come on in the front 3. So I do think Livramento is a slight concern for minutes in this week, but I think long term he's actually a brilliant transfer in for your FPL teams. Again, guys, if you're watching this and you're enjoying it, please do consider dropping a like. We're going to keep going with the questions, but what I want to do is quickly put up my team right now without any transfers to give you a bit of an idea on where I am sat in my thought process for transfers. So let's get the transfer plan right up now. You can see I had a red arrow in game week 40. My rank fell to 432,000. To be honest with you, it's only an 8k red arrow, so it isn't as bad as what it seems, thankfully. So with the team right now, I'm in a position where I've got 1 free transfer available, 1.1 million in the bank. I'm just going to quickly go through some of my thoughts, and then we will come back to the questions. So In terms of my starting 11 right now, Areola is literally destined to never keep a clean sheet while I own him, and I've just come to terms with that situation. So Spurs away, I think, is going to be another example of a game where he doesn't get a clean sheet. So that is an issue for my team, is something that I might consider using one of my free transfers. Looking at the defence, Guy at home against Bournemouth and the double Arsenal defence, I'm really happy with that. In order for me to sell Guy, it would be for Pedro Porro, simple as that. Now, with the Spurs fixture at home against West Ham, I don't necessarily think that's a clean sheet. I think West Ham have the tools available to hurt them on the counter-attack. Somebody like a Jarrod Bowen, I could definitely see getting some joy in that game. So I would be a little bit cautious about selling Guy for Pedro Porro. I think Pedro Porro definitely is one of those that could get a double-digit return. He's great on the bonus points. But Mark Guy has a favourable fixture, but realistically, I could see a 1-1 in that game, for example. So I'm not ruling out Mark Guy to Pedro Porro as a bit more of a long-term transfer for my FPL team. Now, looking at the midfield, these guys are absolutely fine. And to be honest with you, as I've looked through the game weeks, I don't really see a situation where I want to sell any of those 5 midfielders. And that is going to remain the same for game week 15. So I'm absolutely fine with the midfielders that I own in the game. And in terms of the front two, well, Darwin Núñez, eh? So for those that are wondering, yes, I sold Ollie Watkins for Darwin Núñez. But if you go back to my video, I said in my video that this was going to be judged based on 3 game weeks. We've had the first one at home against Fulham. We got the second one coming up away against Sheffield United, and the third one away against Crystal Palace. When I decided to sell Ollie Watkins, of course, there was a bit of a flag on his injury. I thought the Bournemouth game was going to be a bit tougher than what a lot of people perceived, and it nearly was until that last-minute equaliser by Ollie Watkins. I felt the Man City game was a good fixture for Aston Villa, but it's still Man City, a team that does dominate possession, and I didn't really anticipate Rodri to get suspended, so that is a bit of a spanner in the works. And now my perception of that game is actually quite a good fixture for Ollie Watkins, more than what I thought previously. And last up, the Arsenal game in game week 16. I looked at the underlying numbers and saw that Arsenal have the best away defensive record of any team. And if any team is going to break the Aston Villa home form, it is going to be Arsenal. So I've decided to bring in Darwin Núñez for a 3 game week punt. So I am not one of those that is panicking right now. I'm going to assess the situation after game week 16. And who knows, if we do get a start from Darwin Núñez against a managerless Sheffield United, it could be a monster haul. My only doubt, does he actually start that game? That is the big question. My thought was that hopefully Darwin Núñez would have done well against Fulham and given Klopp a reason to never drop him again. Unfortunately, I think he'd done the complete opposite in that Fulham game. But for those that are wondering right now and panicking about maybe jumping back to Ollie Watkins, for me, I could easily do that move, but I'm happy to stick to my guns. And the reason why I brought him in was for the next 2 game weeks. So yes, no Ollie Watkins this week, but it is what it is. So based on that, you're probably looking at this thinking, well, you're not going to make a move. So as I said, my 3 options are this. I roll my free transfer and give myself 2 free transfers for game week 16 because a lot can happen in the midweek. My second option is I do the Mark Guy to Pedro Porro move, but I don't know if the upside is necessarily there this game week. The third option is that I sell Strakosha for Newcastle's goalkeeper in Dubravka. Now, from the reports right now, it sounds like Nick Pope could be out for up to 4 to 5 months. And Dubravka looks like the natural replacement for Nick Pope in that game. Now, there's a few reports about David De Gea coming in as a free agent. Realistically, though, with the wages that he will be demanding, I don't think that is a guaranteed transfer in the game. And I do think Dubravka is a bit of an FPL cheat code if he does actually remain in the game and pretty much stays between the sticks between now and March. I think Dubravka at 3.9 million is almost impossible to ignore. And for my own team, and I will come on to it in a minute, the rotation of Dubravka and Areola is actually really, really good. I'd bring him in this week, start him away against Everton. I'm not saying that's an easy game, but I prefer it than Areola away against Spurs. And then after that, I'll be able to rotate the 2 goalkeepers really well over the foreseeable future. And what it also does is gives me that double Newcastle defence to maybe counteract the ownership of Trippier right now in the game, because I just see no easy way for me to get to Kieran Trippier. So at the time of recording, I am planning on pulling the trigger and doing Strakosha to Dubravka, just to give you a bit of a live update on the price change situation, because I think this is going to be quite a busy evening for potential FPL price changes. So let me give you a bit of a shout out on the significant players that are going to be rising and falling in price. Players that look like they could rise in price are going to include Zinchenko, Kelleher, Fabian Schär, and potentially Dubravka. So Dubravka could go up to 4 million tonight. In terms of players that are falling in price that are notable, Bowen looks like he could potentially fall in price tonight. Neto, but I don't know if anybody else owns him. And Matty Cash. He looks like he could fall in price to 4.9 million. So please do be cautious if you are one of those managers that owns Matty Cash. Maybe selling him tonight might be the move rather than tomorrow to not lose out on that 0.1 million. So let me get back to the questions. That's a bit of an idea on what I'm doing. Next up, I'll come through my team plans in future game weeks to give you an idea on how I'm going to get through this December period. So a few more questions in the chat. Whom to replace Onana with? Realistically, I think Dubravka's not a bad replacement now, knowing that he should be in the team for the next few months if you want to save a bit of cash. Otherwise, I think looking at the fixtures and the options available to us, I don't love a lot of goalkeepers, but I do think someone like Leno is perfectly fine at Fulham if you want to invest in him. Anderson for James. James, I do expect to come back into the team. Malagusto looks like he could be out for a few more game weeks. So I do like Reece James. I think he will return to the Chelsea team. My only issue is I still don't think he's 100% fit. And over this crazy Christmas period, we could see him rotated in and out of the team. So I like it. I don't think it's a desperate move that you need to make this week, though. It is worth noting. You're selling someone like Anderson at home against Bournemouth to someone like Reece James away against Man United, who's not fully fit. And say what you will about Man United, but they still have the capability to score against Chelsea. Dan's saying Castro for a -4. I don't love it for a -4, only because I'm not confident on the Spurs defence, but I still think it is an okay investment if you want to go and look at it as more of a long-term move. Then I don't mind it. Whenever you do -4s, in your mind, you need to get an understanding of what is deemed a success. So, for example, if you bring in a player with only a 1 game week vision, if he doesn't repay that in 1 game week, then it is naturally a failure. However, if you bring in someone like a Pedro Porro and you're looking at him as a 5 game week move, you don't really assess the -4 that you've taken until after those 5 game weeks have been done. So it depends on your forecast and how far you're looking ahead. If it's a long-term move, then yes, I do like it. Johnson or Palmer? I would say Palmer, because Johnson, yes, he is a differential, but I can't sit here and confidently tell you that his game time is going to be locked in. But look, if you're looking for a differential, I think he is a nice one to go for. Caleb saying, or Caleb, is it? Hi mate, I've got 1 free transfer. Should I sell Turner to Dubravka and play over Areola, or sell Cash, who is sitting on my bench, or just roll? So with the Matty Cash situation, what I would suggest doing is taking a look over the next few game weeks and saying to yourself, is there a game week where I'm going to play Matty Cash, or is he somebody who I'm just hoping to hold till game week 18, where we have the blank game week and he has that great fixture? So if he's somebody that you're going to bench for the next 3 or 4 game weeks, I probably would advise selling him and bringing in somebody like a Pedro Porro if you want to longer term, or a Newcastle defender. I think both of those are good options. Otherwise, I like the Turner to Dubravka move, but again, it's a luxury move because I don't even think Everton away is a guaranteed clean sheet for Newcastle. I think Everton have been a really good team from an attacking perspective. Their underlying numbers have been fantastic. So I would say to you that although it is a good long-term move for Dubravka, I don't think you're necessarily going to reap all the returns this game week. Josh saying Cash to who? Hopefully I've covered that off. I think Pedro Porro long-term, and you have to view it as a long-term transfer, is a good option. What I'm going to do is check on the fixtures for you now. Over the next 6 game weeks, this will give us a bit of an understanding of which teams to target. Now, it's worth noting, I've slightly adapted this graphic so that I've taken out some of the teams that we definitely don't want to own. I've taken out Luton's, Burnley's, all of those teams. So as you can see, first and foremost, game week 18 is a blank for Brentford and Man City. So if you're considering any players from those teams, please do proceed with caution. Yes, they've got a great 3 fixtures coming up, but game week 18 will pose a problem unless you're looking to free hit in that game week. So as you can see, Wolves, not a bad team to invest in, but I don't really know what defender I would recommend going for right now. Maybe someone like a Kilman, just to get yourself some guaranteed minutes in the team. At Fulham, I think Robinson's actually quite a good differential as well. Looking at the games coming up, Forest at home, West Ham at home, and Burnley at home, I think is a really good run of home fixtures, and he could be a really nice cheap enabler into your team to come in and out whenever you require him. So I think Robinson's a really good option as well. We've discussed Pedro Porro. As you can see with the fixtures, this is a long-term move for your team. So yes, he might not keep many clean sheets over this period, but I think he offers such good attacking potential with set pieces and open play XG that I think he is worth the move in the long term. The big one, of course, that we're all talking about is Reece James. Do I expect him to come back into the team? Yes. Is he going to stay in the team every single week? I think no. And it's only because he's come back from such a long-term injury. Then he's got the suspension. He hasn't really had any time to get into full flow. And the last thing they want with Reece James is to play Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Saturday, Wednesday. I think that could be a bit of a stretch for him. So Reece James is definitely on my radar come game week 17. But I would prefer to buy Pedro Porro over Reece James right now. Anisha's saying, is the Dubravka to Areola rotation a good option? And yes, I do think it is a good option. Just to give you a bit of an idea on how that rotation goes, I don't have it on the screen for you. But if I just read it out, just kind of give you an indication of what we would get. So if you went for the Areola Dubravka rotation, you'd have probably Dubravka for this game week away against Everton, which is perfectly fine. Then in game week 16, you would play Areola away against Fulham. Not too bad. Then in game week 17, I think you probably would go for Dubravka at home against Fulham. You then have Dubravka away against Luton, followed by Dubravka at home against Nottingham Forest. Then in game week 20, you would have Areola at home against Brighton, Areola away against Sheffield United, and Areola at home against Bournemouth. So you've got some really good long-term fixtures with that goalkeeper rotation, and I'm quite a big fan of it. So yes, I do like that move. Isha's saying, who do I start, Livramento or Guy? This is the big one right now. I'm currently leaning towards Mark Guy because I know he is guaranteed game time in a decent fixture at home against Bournemouth, whereas Livramento, I think, offers a lot more potential, but I am a little bit worried about his game time. We need to remember they're playing on the weekend as well, so Lewis Hall could easily come in for this midweek game, and Livramento returns for the weekend game. So based on that, I'm just leaning towards Mark Guy unless we get any sort of indication that Livramento is a guaranteed starter tomorrow, or is it Thursday? I believe it's Thursday. Freddie saying, what's your best ever FPL finish? So 2 seasons ago, I finished 270th in the world. Not 270,000th, 270th. So obviously, it's a finish that I'm probably never going to top because we all know you need a little bit of luck along the way. But to give you a bit of an indication on how my ranks have been over the last few years, finished 46k last year. I was a bit disappointed with last year. Year before that was 270th. Year before that was 8,000th. And year before that was 71k. Previous to that, I basically was 100k, 94k, 100k. So I kind of played a lot back then got really serious, got myself down to 8k, 270th in the world, 46k, and now I'm hoping to beat that this season, although the rank right now isn't in the best place, but I am one of those optimistic managers who I think I can always turn it around, and I always feel confident about myself getting it in a good position. So as always, guys, please do fire any questions that you do have in the chat. This is the perfect opportunity to get anything off your chest that you need answering. Tom's saying, thoughts on Kyle Walker? I think Kyle Walker is a good option. My only worry about Kyle Walker is that they blank in game week 18. So let me assume you're sat there with Erling Haaland, maybe someone like an Mbeumo. If we come to game week 18 and you're not free hitting, you will have a bench straight away of Walker, Mbeumo, Haaland, and you have to field an 11. And I'm assuming you are going to have a little bit of a ropey team that game week. So I like Kyle Walker, but Villa away, I'm not anticipating a clean sheet. Then we got Luton and Palace. Those are 2 really good fixtures, but then you have to navigate that game week 18. And because it's a blank, I'm not thinking it's the best transfer right now to bring in Kyle Walker into your FPL teams. Bazooka saying, Nketiah to a 4.3 million, a 4.3 million midfielder to Gordon, cash to Lascelles, and leaves me with 0.5 in the bank. All this by taking a -4. Okay, so firstly, I wouldn't be buying Gordon right now until we get an understanding from Eddie Howe that he is fully available. I would be a little bit cautious about his game time. He did go off with a slight knock. I wouldn't do that until we actually get concrete news from Eddie Howe. But of course, Eddie Howe is a little bit of a cryptic manager when it comes to his press conferences. So I don't think we can hold our breath on getting news between now and then, unfortunately. So I do like the moves because you're getting rid of Nketiah and you're strengthening the rest of your team. So yes, I do like it, but I wouldn't do it unless we get some news about Gordon. And Jonathan's saying, why did you select Guy over Livramento? Literally just for guaranteed minutes. If I knew Livramento was definitely going to start, I would obviously play Livramento in this game week. And Luke's saying the problem with that is you may want Isak, Trippier and Gordon. Yes, so that is the one caveat that we need to talk about here. If you are going to be investing in Dubravka as your backup goalkeeper, and maybe you already have a Livramento or a Lascelles, you only have one more outfield spot available to bring in a Newcastle player. And as Luke has rightly so said, we got some brilliant options in the game with Alexander Isak, with Kieran Trippier, with Gordon. So that Dubravka move, although it looks great in the short term, long term could block us off from owning some really, really good assets. And if you look at the fixtures on your screen here, Everton away followed by Spurs away. I don't feel like it's the best time to invest in Newcastle assets right now, but come game week 17, Fulham at home, Luton away and Nottingham Forest at home, that could be the opportunity to bring in an attacking Newcastle asset. And if you're already sat there with maybe a Livramento and then you do the Dubravka move, you can only pick one attacker, and maybe doubling up on the attack is the way to go over that period. So you need to be a little bit cautious if you are bringing in Dubravka to avoid that issue. So something that I want to do as well, guys, for you is give you a bit of an indicator on what my plans are going over the next few weeks. So here's how my team is currently looking on your screens. Okay, so here's how my team's currently looking for game week 15 without any transfers. Now, as I mentioned, the current plan to strengthen my team, I personally feel, is to do the Dubravka move, to sell Strakosha, bring in Dubravka at 3.9 million. A reminder, it does look like Dubravka could go up in price tonight, so do be a little bit cautious with that if you are waiting on that transfer. So I'd bring in Dubravka, I'd have a Newcastle asset while benching Livramento, and I get a bit of the best of the both worlds then. Coming into game week 16, this is how my team would look. I would play Areola away against Fulham. I would play Livramento away against Spurs. Not the best fixture, but it is what it is sometimes. I'd have the double Arsenal defence away against Aston Villa. Not ideal. Midfield is pretty good. And the front two of Darwin Núñez and Erling Haaland. So the team would look okay. Obviously, I would go for Haaland captain away against Luton, although there could be some concerns about a rotation there. In terms of the best fixtures to target in game week 16, Brentford away against Sheffield United, but because they're blank in game week 18, I don't feel like I want to own anyone outside of Mbeumo. Brighton, I literally do not know who I would own in that fixture at home against Burnley, so I think you just avoid Brighton, unfortunately. Chelsea away against Everton, I think that's a tough fixture. I wouldn't be looking to invest in any additional Chelsea assets in game week 16. Fulham at home against West Ham, not really any investment. Liverpool, I wouldn't touch. Man City's the big one in game week 16 here. They are away against Luton. That feels like a fixture where you definitely want to have an additional asset outside of Erling Haaland. But once again, if you were to bring in a Phil Foden or a Julian Alvarez, for example, you need to consider that game week 18 is a blank. So while it looks great for game week 16 and 17, you're then going to be sat there with a Man City option who is going to blank. One thing that you could consider, and something I could consider for game week 16 potentially, and on your screens right now is game week 16, is what I could potentially look to do is sell Darwin Núñez, who is away against Crystal Palace, and bring in someone like a Julian Alvarez. If I can get him up. I believe he comes under J. Alvarez. Here we go. So a move that I could consider is doubling up on the Man City attack, leaving my team like that. Then when we come into game week, I believe, 17, we would then play Dubravka at home against Fulham. We've already got Alvarez in place for that brilliant home fixture against Crystal Palace, so it's looking good. And then the rest of the team kind of picks itself. Now, in terms of game week 17, the fixtures that you want to own in is going to be Bournemouth at home against Luton. I wouldn't have Dominic Solanke, but again, we can't own them all sometimes, unfortunately. Burnley at home against Everton. Again, don't really want any Burnley players. And then we got the big one, Chelsea at home against Sheffield United. And I feel like this is the fixture where I would look to potentially take a punt on a certain Reece James. So Saliba out for Reece James absolutely would be a consideration for my team. And it would leave it looking like this for game week 17. So I've got Dubravka, Livramento, Reece James and Gabriel, a brilliant defence and goalkeeper combination. I'd have a midfield five of Palmer, Son, Saka, Mbeumo and Salah, and a front two of Man City in Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. So I'll be really happy with the way the team looks in that game week. Again, this is only using free transfers. Yes, I wouldn't have Dominic Solanke. He probably is a safer minutes option, but again, we can't own them all always, unfortunately. Now, coming into game week 18, this is where you all need to understand how your team is going to look with the blank game week. So, for example, Erling Haaland would blank, so I'd have to bring in Charlie Taylor. Mark Guy would have to play instead of Julian Alvarez, which would then replace Mbeumo. And all of a sudden, I'm having to start Mabama, which is not a good situation, and my team starts to look bad. However, this is where obviously having that transfer available gives me a bit of flexibility. So with the money in the bank, I would then look to sell Julian Alvarez for Ollie Watkins, who is very, very hard to ignore in game week 18 because he has an amazing fixture at home against Sheffield United. And all of a sudden, the team will look like this for game week 18. Now, remember, this is just all with free transfers. And my team in game week 18 would have what I would deem as 11 starters. Yes, it wouldn't have a bench, but I think you just need to get by in blank game week 18 if you're not going to be using your free hit. I think you've got a lot of good ownership in teams. The only situation that I wouldn't be owning in is no Solanke away against Nottingham Forest, not an additional Aston Villa player, of course. And the other fixture that we wouldn't have is any Newcastle attacking asset away against Luton. That would be the big concern. Otherwise, I think double Newcastle defence isn't a bad differential to have in game week 18. So I feel like with my team right now, if I do go down that avenue, I can just kind of roll my forwards that I'm going to have week in, week out, barring no injuries, of course. This is if I get very lucky without any injuries in the team. And I think I can navigate game week 18 without a free hit. So that is an idea on how my team is going to look. I'm going to go back to the screen to get this out of the way and answer some more questions. As I'm conscious I have not been in the chat for a little while, so I do apologise. Good evening, fan. Do you advocate rolling a free transfer this game week? So I personally think rolling the free transfer is always a fantastic move if you can do so. But of course, it is all team dependent. If you have loads of problems with your team, suspensions, injuries, then I do think using the transfer is suitable for your team. However, rolling the transfer is always going to be beneficial over this festive period because so much can happen. So much can happen over this period with injuries, rotation. So having that second transfer, if you can do it, is a really, really good position to be in. So I was making sure I've got that sorted. Yeah. Morris is saying, I have bought Cash at 5 million now. He is 4.9 and tonight he could be 4.8. Should I sell him for Porro or just hold him and buy Dubravka for Turner? So I don't actually think Matty Cash is at that price point. Am I wrong? Let me have a look for you. Sorry for those that just tune in. I just want to make sure you are correct in terms of the Matty Cash situation. So Cash is currently 5 million, so he'll go down to 4.9. It's worth noting. So he won't go down to 4.8. Should I sell him for Porro or just hold him and buy Dubravka? My advice is this: do you see a situation where you start Cash over the next few weeks? If you don't, I think Cash to Porro is a good move. Yes. Is Sanchez good now? I wouldn't say right now, but he definitely will be a good option in a couple of game weeks' time. If you want to get ahead of the game, I think Sanchez is perfectly fine. But Chelsea haven't necessarily been keeping a lot of clean sheets. Defensively are still a little suspect. DJ saying, what to do with Gordon? I have Eze. Should I transfer for Palmer? So I think with Eze, it sounds like he could be returning sooner rather than usual. But over this festive period, a week actually is multiple game weeks. For example, we've had a deadline 14 on Saturday. We're going to have game week 15 on Tuesday, game week 16 on Saturday. You blink, a week's gone and 3 game weeks have passed. So I don't think you can hold on to a player that's injured. I think Eze de Palma is a solid move, yes. Bartos is saying, what do you think about Diaby and Bowen out for Saka and Palmer in for a -4? I wouldn't really advise that. I think Saka is a great investment this week, and so is Cole Palmer. But Diaby against this Man City defence, I think, could do well. And Jarrod Bowen isn't a bad option to own this week against this Spurs defence. Yes, I know Romero's back, but I think you're selling 2 players there for a -4. I just don't think it's going to pay it back this week. If you view it as a transfer that's going to be a 6 game week move, then yes, I can get behind it. But based on 1 game week, I don't really like it. Will you buy Dubravka tonight with the price rise? I don't feel forced to do the move tonight, but I could be tempted. I will try and update you guys if I do make the move in the comment section of YouTube. Akshat saying, hey Nacho, I have one free transfer, buy Palmer Gordon for Diaby or bench Diaby and roll the transfer. So you have one free transfer, buy Palmer or Gordon for Diaby or bench Diaby and roll the transfer. So I'll be interested to know who are starting over Diaby. I personally think I would start Diaby against Man City. I wouldn't buy Gordon because there's a little bit of doubt about his injury. So I think rolling the transfer will be beneficial for your team. Hwang is a brilliant move. Yes, Liz, I do like Hwang. He's a good long-term pick. And with the fixtures that I've shown on the screen, Wolves long-term have the best fixtures. So he could just sit in your team week in, week out, knowing that he is the goal threat in that Wolves team. So yes, Hwang is a brilliant move. Roll this week and then do Johnson to Dubravka, Trent to Bell, and Darwin to Haaland for a -4. Yes, I don't mind it, but it's going to be very difficult to sell your Liverpool assets like Trent in game week 16. But I get it. If you want Haaland, then the moves that you're suggesting now I think do make sense. Just remember, Dubravka will be more expensive come next game week, so just be cautious of that. But I do like the moves in order for you to bring Haaland back in. So yes, I do like it. Matty Cash will discuss, I think Pedro Porro is a brilliant move this week, as long as you look at it as a long-term move, because you can see the fixtures on the screen. Pedro Porro, I don't think he's going to keep tons of clean sheets, but he takes all set pieces in the absence of Maddison, and he is brilliant in open play. So I think Pedro Porro long-term is a great investment for your teams. Those that are asking about when I flick through the planner on the screens, this is basically a Google Chrome extension with Fantasy Football Fix. So you can check it out. It's called FPL Plus. Free download. You just need an account with Fantasy Football Fix. It's fully integrated with the official site. It's ridiculously good. The best around by far. Would you do Areola to Dubravka and Diaby to Palmer? My only concern with doing Areola to Dubravka is if your other backup goalkeeper was maybe someone like a Turner, and then Newcastle did bring in, let's say, a David De Gea on a free agent, you suddenly have no starting goalkeeper. So we'll be a little bit cautious of doing Areola to Dubravka, but a few of the Newcastle forums suggest that they're really happy with Dubravka and he's more than a suitable replacement for Nick Pope. So I think you would be okay with Dubravka as your starter, but just be a little bit cautious of that situation arising. Jack saying, is keeping Diaby good, or should I go to Kudos and a -4, and is Gabriel a rotation risk? I think Gabriel is always a potential rotation risk, but I think we just got to hold on to him now and know that he is probably in Arteta's best 11, but if he was to get rotated in this Luton fixture, I probably would just say it is a case of he's just getting his minutes managed and all players could get rotated over this midweek. So I wouldn't be selling Gabriel on the assumption of potentially him getting rotated. And Levi's saying, I've been doing well without Haaland, but I just know I'll have to get him back in sooner or later. Should I do it before the blank or should I just wait till after? Okay, so the issue if you wait until after the blank is the fixtures beforehand. So I think Villa isn't necessarily a guaranteed haul for Haaland, but Luton away followed by Crystal Palace at home just feels really difficult not to own someone like an Erling Haaland. Now, game week 18, obviously, you're going to have to navigate the blank game week. But then after that, Everton, Sheffield United. I personally couldn't go without Erling Haaland for game week 16 and 17. The turnaround as well is Sunday, Saturday. It's not like the Luton game is midweek. Yes, we could see Haaland play game week 15 and benched in game week 16, but 20 minutes of Haaland against Luton could be enough. So I would be scared to go without Haaland. I would try and get him in before the blank and just try and navigate game week 18 with him in your teams. Youngster is saying, I haven't used my wildcard yet. Should I use it now or soon? Okay, so the wildcard's a really interesting one. Let me get the fixtures up for you right now. So you can approach the wildcard in a few different ways. If your team's in a position where it's in a really bad spot, then maybe just using the wildcard now is a good move. Personally, I think wildcard in a game week 19 makes a bit of sense. We were hoping to get a double game week in 20, but the closer we get to game week 20 deadline, the less optimistic we are about a double game week in 20. So Whereas we were discussing about tripling up on Brentford, tripling up on Man City, if we don't get the double announced, then I feel a little bit less inclined to go all in on those teams. So right now, what you could do potentially with wildcard is look to invest heavy in the Man City and Brentford assets to then wildcard out of them eventually. I haven't really deep dive into a wildcard. Maybe I should do a wildcard draft before the deadline. Might do a quick short video on YouTube. But in terms of a wildcard, I wouldn't be doing it right now. No, I would just look to buy the best players in each game week, knowing that you have a wildcard available to kind of come out of the team that you've heavily invested. I wouldn't be doing the wildcard right now. Start Guy or Diaby. It's tricky. Guaranteed minutes for Guy versus maybe a rotation risk in Diaby, but obviously the upside is there with Diaby. I personally would go for Mark Guy because I'm a bit of a boring manager. In Firewolf is saying, what are your thoughts on Willian and Langer? Good players. Fulham's fixtures long term are really good. He could be a fantastic differential. I just don't feel inclined to go there. And Langer, I definitely wouldn't consider myself. Anyone that watched the Nottingham Forest game, they looked pretty poor going forward. So I would be a little bit concerned about owning an attacking asset from Nottingham Forest. Benny, I'm doing very well. I hope you are too. Thanks, Nacho. I'm currently starting Lascelles, therefore benching Diaby, and also starting Shimikas, Saliba, Gabriel. Yes, I don't mind that at all. Hopefully that does pay off for you, mate. Is Watkins to Alvarez a good move? No. Personally, I wouldn't be selling Ollie Watkins. I think Aston Villa are the perfect team to hurt Man City in transitions. We saw it with the counter-attack of Spurs. The central spine of Man City are all over the place right now in terms of direct running. We've seen it in loads of different games. We also see him get bullied in direct play as well. We saw it with Arsenal where they went long from Saliba and Gabriel into Kai Havertz later on in the game. I think they're going to get hurt in the centre of the pitch. And I think they do have the players available to kind of get around the Man City press. They got people like Boubacar Kamara, Douglas Luiz, real good players who are able to get out of those pressing patterns. And once they do get beyond that press, I think they've got the players to really hurt that Man City defence. Levo saying, could owning Foden and Doku cover not owning Haaland? Well, Doku went off with a slight knock, so I would be cautious of Doku, so I wouldn't be going there personally. Foden, I think, is a great differential. I'm a little bit worried about Foden's game time, but it looks like he is getting the trust of Pep a bit more week in, week out. Can he cover Haaland? No, I don't think so. Would you play your free hit in Game Week 18 to avoid selling your City and Brentford assets? Yes, I definitely think the Game Week 18 free hit is suitable for some managers. The reason why you would go for that strategy, to give you an idea, is basically what you can do with the free hit is this. Looking at the fixtures, you could, not necessarily this game week, but in Game Week 16, you could get yourself an Alvarez and maybe a Man City defender. And Brentford, you could look to get yourself another Brentford asset. The reason why that'd be a brilliant move is because not many other managers are going to do so because of the blank in Game Week 18. Once you arrive at Game Week 18, you can free hit, bring in all the great players. So you could bring in Ollie Watkins with that great fixture. You could bring in Spurs players for their game against Everton. And then once we get to Game Week 19, your team will then obviously reset to the previous and you will have a team stacked full of Man City and Brentford assets. Whereas other managers might be playing catch-up, looking at the City fixtures of Everton away and Sheffield United home thinking, oh, I got to start getting these players in. But they didn't bring them in for the Luton and Crystal Palace fixtures. So that's where your upside will be. A lot of managers will go for City in Game Week 19, but you can get the gains in 16 and 17. So I do like the free hit in Game Week 18. Something I'm considering, but I am trying to navigate it without the free hit, just because I like holding on to my chips later on in the season. And DJ saying best time for a bench boost. So I think the bench boost is going to be in Game Week 37. We got a really big anticipated double game week in 37 because of the FA Cup involvement and other things. So that is going to be the time to do so. Now, the reason why I say that is because when you do a bench boost, you need to ensure that you build a really solid 15-man squad. And the problem with that in usual seasons is you'll build a squad of 15 players, invest your money by spreading it across the rest of the team, and then you slowly have to take the money off your bench to invest back in the 11. Because Game Week 37 is obviously only one game week away from the end of the season, you don't really have to worry about it. You can get all your money in the 15, bench boost, and then in Game Week 38, you can kind of just not have to worry about being sat there with a squad that is really well invested rather than on the 11. So that is the time to use your bench boost if you can wait till then. And Young Sun is saying, thanks for the thoughts around the wildcard situation. Always appreciate it. If we decide to do a video around it as well, would be great, but nice to hear your thoughts anyways. No problems at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave my team up here for a minute, because I think we're going to wrap it up in the next 5 minutes, just because it's a school night, and of course we do need to get our sleep wherever we are in the world. So obviously, if you are enjoying the stream, please do consider dropping a like. I will wrap it up in a minute. So if you have any last minute questions, please do drop them in the chat, and I'll be sure to answer them between now and, of course, when I wrap it up. Just to give you an idea on what my plans are. Guy to Pedro Porro is definitely a consideration, but for my team, I just don't know whether it is worth me doing so. My only other consideration why I'm against doing the Pedro Porro move is because I had the plan of doing Darwin Núñez to Watkins in game week 17 or 18. If I was to allocate the money that I have in the bank to improving Mark Guy to Pedro Porro, I don't really have a route back to Ollie Watkins, and that's my only concern if I do go down that route. I always feel like keeping Mark Guy this week and then using Saliba as my cash cow for a Pedro Porro or Reece James is the right move. Keeps the balance of the squad and gives me the money in the bank to be able to enable myself to bring in Ollie Watkins when he has that amazing Sheffield United at home fixture in game week 18. So right now, I'm leaning towards either rolling my transfer or doing Strakosha to Dubravka and getting myself a starting 3.9 goalkeeper in that Newcastle defence. That is my current thought process. Now, 2K Will saying, have you wildcarded yet, mate? Yes, I wildcarded back in game week. When did I wildcard? In game week 10. And since game week 10, it's been a pretty productive wildcard. Prior to my wildcard, I was ranked 850k. And since then, I've done 850k, 800k, 620, 540, and now I'm about 430 in the world. So it's been a progressive improvement each game week since the wildcard. A slight bump in the road in game week 14 that's just gone. I basically was an Arsenal clean sheet away from being about 200k in the world. That's how small the margins are right now in FPL. Obviously, that was to be wiped out. So I think we're going to wrap up the live stream there. I'm really thankful for you guys that jumped in on this quite spontaneous live stream, but I think it was beneficial for those that maybe had a few questions going into the game week 15 deadline, which of course is 6 p.m. tomorrow UK time. So do not miss that deadline. Unfortunately, due to work commitments, I won't be able to do a deadline live stream tomorrow, but I will try and drop a team selection video that will come out around 7 a.m. tomorrow for the rest of the day, just to give you an indication of what I did do with my team. So if you are interested, please do consider being a subscriber. It's been a real good week, actually, of engagement with everybody, so it would be awesome to have you on board this season as part of a subscriber. And as always, if you don't enjoy what you're watching, stick around for a week, and then if it is providing no value, jump onto another fantastic content creator out there, because there are so many around. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. 2K Will, thank you to 24K Will. Sorry, I've been saying your name wrong. Thank you so much for tuning into this live stream, guys. As I said, I will drop a video tomorrow on my team selection, which will come out at 7 a.m. tomorrow. So make sure you stick around for that one. Once again, make sure you drop a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, have a brilliant evening, and I'll see you very soon.